Welcome here, everyone. We are excited to be underway with the NECC Winter 2025 season, or spring, whichever way you want to roll it. I am excited to be back on the desk here. It is going to be, hopefully, another amazing season of some League of Legends. We are going to have the games of League of Legends, of all League of Legends games, and hopefully it's a good sign tonight. We are starting a little bit later than usual. Normally, we would be starting at about 8 p.m. ET, so I thank you all for tuning in and obliging us here today. My name is Orbital. With me is the best minion to ever wander off the rift. It is Random Minion Caster, and we will be your casters for this best of 3 here tonight in Fearless Draft as well. RMC, how you doing?
Orbital, I'm hyped to get into it. It's week 1, so kind of a new league start for a lot of these teams. And tonight, we're starting in Division 2, Group A. So we're kind of up there in terms of divisions, and 2 teams which are both new and old at the same time. We've got uOttawa Grey promoting from Division 3 to Division 2 in spring. So that's a bit of a new name here in Div 2. And then we've got the Drexel Dragons as well as their opponents tonight, who, you know what, they were in Div 2 back in fall as well, but the rosters keep changing for them. I think this is the first time in a while that they've actually retained most of their players. They've only made 1 roster change, so it's kind of the same team that made the playoffs last split.
I mean, they've done so well, so let's go ahead and take a look at the players that'll be joining us here today. Some of them on the starting roster, some of them maybe hopping in a little bit last minute. We got uOttawa Grey, we got ET, which we are lovingly being allowed to call ET, in the top lane for uOttawa Grey. We got Casey, or Carl, in the jungle. We got Kos, I'm calling him Caustic, of course, but in the ADC role, we got 42-year-old dad, which is misspelled because that's how we like to roll here. And then we got 5e in that support role.
Hold up, we can't just skip over that. There's a difference between 40-year-old dead and 42-year-old dad.
It is. I mean, I'm 32 years old dead, and I mean, I'm still kicking around here. We got Drexel Dragons on the other side. We got Sarnical, Lithuania. We got Gravity Music, who is stepping in here as a sub. Unfortunately, the main starter, Casimir, which if you've been following Drexel Dragons, you know and love, unfortunately out for tonight. We got Nori B in the ADC role, and then we got Salty at support.
Yeah, Salty, the new support coming in for Drexel Dragons, I've been told, a very different style of play compared to Shin, a very energetic sort of support. So I'm kind of keeping my eyes in that ball lane, and Orbi already a very aggressive AD carry who likes to make things happen in lane especially, paired with an energetic support like Shin. That should be fun. But Orbital, we talked about how, in fact, this is kind of week 1, so it should be the first time teams are matching up for the season. But interestingly enough, it is not the case for these 2 teams. There were placement matches in the first place, and these 2 teams actually met in the placement matches. Funnily enough, when it happened, both these teams had subs. For uOttawa Grey, they had a substitute in the jungle role. For Drexel, they had a substitute, I believe it was in the AD carry role. And when they kind of battled it up with subs, it was Drexel Dragons walking away with the win. So tonight is a bit of a rematch with no subs for uOttawa Grey, but still a sub on the side of Drexel Dragons.
And most importantly, in that mid lane, we talked about how Casimir does play a lot of scaling champions, loves to kind of wait until that later game to really pop off in a lot of those scenarios. And you take a look at the new season, and obviously we have the new bounty system. It is very much tailored towards a little bit of early game aggression. If you don't have control over that mid lane, it is a problem, or at least some form of rotational value. We see the Ahri still around. I mean, Victor's such high priority. Granted, it's not really early game, but the utility that a Victor can bring, I think, is what is a huge power point here right now. I do not believe Mel is enabled at the current moment. I believe that's coming next week as well. So we'll be keeping eyes on that in the future, because that will be its own issue in the future. I mean, I'm curious about this mid lane matchup.
Yeah, and worth noting as well, besides Mel being banned because she is still a new champion to the league, Syndra has been banned tonight because there's a bug right now with her W where it's not costing mana properly. So because of that, both those mid laners will be disabled. Now, in terms of the mid lane matchup overall, it's interesting you bring that one up because both our mid laners for tonight, Gravity Music as well as Kaztek, like Victor. In fact, Kaztek was a little bit sad that, you know, his whole graphic and animation got changed because of the whole arcane thing. I'm kind of with him. I like the old Victor kind of look. The new one, he looks a bit too alien for my taste, a little bit too skinny. The old one at least looked a bit more human. Gravity Music, I feel like maybe the gravity in his name refers to the gravity well from Victor as well. I fully expect to see that one highly prioritized by the teams or banned by the red side.
And that's one ban already taken out for either red or blue. And here's the deal, red side currently has so many bans that they have to deal with. Now, granted, we are in Div 2, so there's a little bit more unique flair, in my opinion. But once you get into Fearless, if we dive a little bit further, then say Game 3 in the future, I mean, we see some of these bans roll through. Here's the deal, though. Game 1, Game 2s, we do see some of those same bans shaking out. With red side currently, one of the top tiers that is banned is Skarner. Skarner has been such a terror in the pros side, even trickling down into the collegiate. And if you have to focus on Victor and Skarner, you only have one ban left in the early stages.
Fair enough. And if you're looking at pro play as well, things like Varus and Callista have been almost on the permaban list, something that has to be taken out along with that Skarner. It is worth noting as well, we are running full Fearless here in Division 1 and Division 2 of NECC. So tonight will be full Fearless in this best of 3. So overall, you know, the bright side is things like Skarner, if they do go through, things like Victor, if they do get picked up, can only happen once. But if anything, that feels like it gives a little bit of that edge to the blue side, especially if you can kind of dole out one by one these champions throughout the series. Blue side can get these power picks while kind of forcing red side to have to ban a lot of these meta champions.
And that's what's scary. I mean, if we see the Victor pass through, all of a sudden we see Caustic, or maybe even, you're talking about Gravity hopping in there. But there's even some ADCs that are starting to round into the table. Let's talk about that bottom lane. We've got 42-year-old Dad joining in here. Still very much, you know, the old dad on the side of uOttawa Gray. And then you got Inori B, two names that we have seen floating around inside of Collegiate for a little bit of time. But talking about the champions themselves, you see the likes of, I think Callista starting to run up again here with some, you know, interesting supports in there. But the Jinx, High Firing, we're seeing the Varus still roll through. So there is a mesh in there of champions that we can work with. But it's not as, well, depending on how you like to play, it can be very high prio in that blue side pickup.
And I will say, I don't think either for the 2-year-old Dad or Inoribi have been particularly polishing the Callista picks. They both have played a lot of Varus this split, and their second most played champion for both of them is Ezreal as well. So those two AD carries might be highly prioritized for both of them. I'm kind of looking at the supports as well, because we talked about how Salty is sort of the new name to Drexel Dragons, but it's worth noting that 5e on the other side for uOttawa Gray, he actually used to be their top laner, and he's now swapped to support because their original top laner, Ataroy, is back from, I don't know if it's a study break or vacation he was taking in Spain, but he wasn't playing last split for them. And now he's back. He's in top. 5e has rotated to support as well. So I'm also kind of curious to see how the supports play out. 5e I know has a has a pike that he can whip out for a lot of aggression. And Salty, on the other hand, a lot of Janna. So it feels like almost opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of what they like to play.
And it's so weird to see a Janna currently. I mean, Janna to me is one that you have to play very, very high level if you want to see any sort of value output. And to me, that's scary. But uOttawa doing their due diligence. I mean, it makes sense. You mentioned it, and you have to give respect, especially when it comes down to Fearless. Now, granted, some people do allow, you know, some picks to roll through. This time they're saying, we're not taking that chance. Gotta ban that Janna away. Now targeting on the other side as KC loses out on that Viego.
Okay, yeah, targeting KC in the jungle isn't a bit of an interesting one. I was kind of told, apparently, by certain manager that KC is a menace with Shaco in solo queue specifically. I'm actually really curious to see if he'll whip it out here in NECC in organized play, especially when the meta right now seems to be a lot of AoE utility junglers, things like Ivern, Sejuani. Wukong actually really strong right now. Nick's patch will be nerfed a little because of his dominance that he's been showing in organized play.
I always hate the fact that Wukong is such a power pick. I always look at the champion base kit and it feels so less impactful. And then you watch it in a game and just the damage output, the ability to skirmish, all of this just shines so bright. That's why it's banned out on that blue side. You really can't let it go the wayside. Now, the Orin targeted straight at Sarnicle. Sarnicle saying, okay, I can't deal with that one. But the Hui and the Shaco flooded out, which does leave some meta picks up. But the unique bans out here, about 5 out of 6.
Yeah, I mean, Skarner and Varus, in terms of meta, is still available, like you're kind of talking about, Orbital. So I expect to see one of those slammed right away. Victor's on the table. There you go. There's the Skarner for uOttawa Gray. And like you said, just a lot of targeted bans coming through. I think it's interesting, though, that Sarnicle gets the Ornn ban, because he's been playing a lot of Ornn. But I remember last split, he was playing more bruiser, lane-dominant champions rather than these full tanks. And Lithuania was playing a lot of hard engaged champions, like the Nunu. I remember that was one champion that got banned away from him a lot. Things like Skarner as well. I'm curious to see if that has changed up we're seeing the Scion being hovered. If we get a tank in the top side, which I assume is for Sonical, then I almost feel like Lithuania is unlocked to kind of go more damage. If you want something like Nunu, he can be AP Nunu instead of like a tank engaged Nunu.
We have gotten word actually that the first couple picks for Drexel Dragons are actually going to be Lilia as well as Ezreal. So that is why we are currently seeing this right now. We do apologize. There is a current bug. As we know, sometimes the spectator, or not the spectator, the draft clients tend to like to mess around with us a little bit, which is why we're actually seeing a pickup on the other side of the Jhin. This one actually going down towards those hands. And then there is that Victor that we discussed. Now, currently, considering both sides have said that this is going to be very Victor heavy, this is going to be that unfortunate test for Drexel Dragons where they're sitting going, wow, we lost that Victor in the drafting phase. We prioritized something else. So that's very, very rough. We are going to have to see if this continues onwards as that is not a double Scion. I promise you that is not a double Scion. If it is, we are doing all in one. And we have gotten word that that's actually Scion. So that is going to be a tank towards the top side for Sarnical. At least I believe so.
Yeah, you know what? If you could pick 2 Scions in your team, you can pick 5 Scions overall. That is kind of scary. It's really tanky, hard to bust through. Would be tough version, but yeah, we'll kind of see how that kind of pans out. The Scion pick, again, still makes sense, I think, for Sarnical to be able to play. But I do like what uOttawa have drafted so far. It is a lot of comfort to come through. And when you've got something like a Victor, you can afford to go something less tank bustery like the Jhin. But I would like to see a little bit more damage come through from them in that top lane. If this is what you're running, I am a little bit concerned that Victor alone is not going to be enough to cut through a Scion.
I'd also be worried about the fact that you only have one real frontliner right now, the Skarner. Right now, it's looking like a head-to-head of just like clash of meatballs with how that Scion is drafted in, and it scares me. Which is why we're seeing some of those other engage tools taken away from Drexel. You see the Leona, you see the Braum. These are other great engage or team fight action. So I want to see where that extra opportunity comes in. And Drexel Dragons say, hey, if that is actually a Yone, all of a sudden that Victor and the Jhin are in way more discomfort than before.
Yeah, and while the Yone might struggle a little bit in the laning phase against the Victor, who can trade quite effectively, later on, when it comes to the team fights, the threat of the Yone diving the backline is absolutely massive. Okay, we've got yet another bug, another Jhin showing up as well.
Double Scion sounds rough, but if you have a double Jhin, double execute, boom, it's good. We're golden. It doesn't matter. Okay, we have. All right, so that is going to be a rel in the secondary ADC slot that we see there for uOttawa, and then, of course, it is a Gnar on the top side. I like this call, though, double engage on the other side as well for uOttawa, which is going to be matched now by the Alistar. It is quite heavily a face-to-face fight prior, or I should say after, about 25-30 minutes.
Yeah, and I think Alistar is sort of the accepted meta counter to Rel right now. Rel is very, very strong. Her numbers feel a little bit over to you, and she's really good at engaging. And just with Flash, it's pretty much a guaranteed engage nowadays. Alistar kind of prevents that. He's got the Pulverize if she's running at you, hit butt, to kind of knock her back so she can't actually engage on your team. So at the end, I think that the draft doesn't heavily favor either team necessarily. I'm liking Drexel a little bit more. I think their skilling is really, really strong. And I'm looking at KC on side of uOttawa Gray, and to a certain extent the side lanes as well, which have good matchups to try and take over early. If this just goes late and even, it does get a little bit tougher for uOttawa Gray, but they've got nice, strong early lanes.
And again, I like the fact that you pointed out we're looking to the side lane. These mid lane, I mean, there's going to be action, sure, but it is still very dependent on individual plays. We are going to be watching this laning phase with a very heavy anticipation, I think, with the macro sense. I mean, we talk about the bounties, the fact that 3 neutral camps are going to net you one of those bounties. You got first tower, you got 3 first kills, or first to 3 kills, I think is the better way to put it. And then from there, you get extra boots and everything, which I want to get your takes on this. I've had a lot of people say, you know, the upgraded boots, or the tier 3, I guess, boots are not really worth it. Tier 2 upgraded boots is okay. Like, what do you think? Is that actually a high prio for people now?
Well, it's kind of complicated because if the other team to get that, it already means that you got 2 out of 3 of those feats. The feat of warfare, you know, the feat of getting the neutral objectives, whatnot. So your team already has an advantage. So it's a bit hard to say it's causation or correlation, but at the same time, I'm never going to say it's weak. It's basically a free upgrade that you can get, which is always going to be nice. Do teams have to focus on it? I think it depends on your composition. If Drexel doesn't want to compete for those early feats, that's perfectly fine if they want to sit back and skill up instead. They're competent enough to kind of overcome that disadvantage, but it's just making sure that you actually get the game that late, I think, is the bigger issue.
Yeah, I will say I love going the Merc Treads upgrades, because having like a free, or like it's pretty much a free mini Rukern in your pocket is amazing against double or triple AP. I'm not gonna lie, it's fantastic, and it's got me alive one too many times. As we go ahead and take a look though, both junglers are looking to go ahead and scale out. Full clears on the top side with the Skarner moving towards the lower end. Lithuania, of course, going to clear out the camp. I want to say like a hair faster, but both are moving at about the same pace, which is why we are seeing these wards go down from 5e as they rotate towards that mid lane. Caustic going to be sitting up there pretty heavily, but not really being able to help out. So 5e just kind of showing their face here in the mid lane.
And Gravity able to dodge that out is going to be critical. We already said that the Yone, the laning can be a little bit rough, melee into range. Once you hit 6, you can really start to try and look to turn things around a little bit, especially if your jungler gets involved. But if you can shut down the Yone early, it does get really tough. So I appreciate uOttawa recognizing, hey, that's a sub. Let's try and lean on them a little bit heavier. And 42-year-old dad in the bot lane, not losing out too much, is a little bit behind in CS, but not getting pushed.
And considering the fact that, you know, as a Jhin, I don't think you're too upset about farming up underneath this tower. It's actually how much damage is 5e going to eat here. You don't want to take a rough recall right away. Caustic, though, taking a tower shot as we see pings go down here because Lithuania has already understood that this is going to be a challenge on the bot side. KC will not have first turn here on this.
Plus, surprised to see that Salty actually not going to walk up and look for this gank. I thought they would try and play a numbers advantage, but instead Lithuania just helping the push and kind of zoning a little bit. The knockup doesn't land, so it's not going to convert into anything.
It's still good damage though, and I think for Gravity, that's what you could really ask for, is just evening out the HP trade. Now, granted, there is going to be TPs up and available, but for Caustic also, you're okay standing here because you went Grass of the Undying, a little bit more lane sustain instead.
Sure. That is going to be very annoying, and that's one thing that I actually kind of don't like, is when I'm seeing so many range champions run Grass with the Undying to get the extra tankiness, and it's so easy for them to block it into melee champions. We see that contract Echelon able to do that. 5e caught a little bit in rotation, but it's mid lane first blood for Gravity. Pre-6 as well.
Yeah, that, I mean, we flicked away at just the rough time, and honestly, I don't think we could have really caught it because of how quickly it looks like both of them have expended their flashes, so well done to Gravity for getting an advantage there. Now we're seeing on the bot side a little bit of a song and dance.
I think that's actually a huge fact that Gravity is the substitute. He's not the starting mid laner, and he's able to pick this up. We already talked about how strong Yone can be as well. 42-year-old dad being run down.
Oh, and actually this is really, really good because 5e couldn't go in, so Salty and Blueby saying, yeah, this is perfect. Thank you very much. It's just that easy. Now Sarnival on the top side, getting eaten up here and able to flash away to safety. So action around the map currently, as we are watching everyone kind of settle in here to their respective roles.
It looked like a great gank coming through from KC from behind, ready to nail Sarnival into the wall for the stun as well, but not enough damage to cut down a Scion. He is that tanky beast that's so hard to deal with. The bot lane though, bro, I do want to highlight too, Salty didn't actually manage to get the Ignite off. I don't know if it would have been able to take out 5e, but without the Ignite, there's no shot whatsoever, and if you're not converting the kill on 5e, he didn't burn the flash. That's still up and available. He's fine for that reset. The timing wasn't that bad.
I mean, you also take a look at the fact that you're running Barrier on the Ezreal, so this is a very, very safe character, very, very safe champion where you're just not worried at all. You're just chilling out. Now, of course, in the mid lane, Caustic is realizing that, hey, I probably don't want to be here right now. Heavy investment here. As that's a Hextech flash over the wall. Caustic is not going to enjoy this one, though. Level 4, Salty has to run away, but Gravity actually jumped on in. Does have ult, but that's a huge crash down on 3. Plus, the Chaos Storm is going to do some damage, and KC is right in the middle of it. Once again, Sarnival, only level 5, not able to ult into the mix, so that's going to allow a TP to join on in, and Salty is going to make their way around. TP finally channeled, as this is so long, but that's a catch and pin right on back because there is no flash, but that'll be an extra kill going back 1 for 1. Salty about to get chunked down, and that might be the evening up of 2. Now Sarnival gets jumped on as you don't have flash either, but you are quite tanky. Are you going to survive? Are you going to get the third? You're going to die for it. No! ET is alive, just barely. Both teams sit on 2 while Lithuania went straight over to the Groves.
Not quite able to convert, but uOttawa going to be happy at the trades they're getting in the mid lane. I appreciate Lithuania saying that, hey, I can't do anything. I need that level 6. I need that lilting lullaby. I'm going to be honest, if Lithuania was around, maybe Drexel could have won that fight, but I do think getting the grubs was probably the better call. Get that rolling. This does mean, though, overall, the NECC kill is critical. That would be a feat, or whoever gets a NECC kill, that would be 3 in their pocket.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty sure that was a skin noise going on. I hate the fact that Sion has a different noise for every skin. I need to hear that audio cue. Like, please, just keep that sound the same, or else I'm never gonna know if a Sion ults into my lane or not.
Well, thankfully, they won't be ulting into your lane, over because you don't have to play this game. We just get to watch.
That's true. Okay, that's actually fair. I agree with that.
I think it'd be funnier if they actually made the Sion noise different, depending on like if you were actually clicking on a champion or just running back to lane. Because that was just the farm alarm coming from Sarnical. ET wasn't even in lane at that point.
ET was like, okay, thank you very much. Granted, we've seen that quite a few times. 5e once again joining into this mid lane as the rotations coming out from 5e constantly hunting for this mid lane is starting to force Salty to also rotate. And it's very curious to see who will have that proactivity and who will start being the reactive once Dragon becomes a true focus.
Sarnical playing with fire a little bit, not afraid to step up, even with that low health, saying that, hey, Meganar is not the issue, but ET going back to mini is able to poke out. And mid lane, we do see 5e roaming out to mid a lot, but that ward from Gravity is doing so much work.
Yeah.
Gravity is playing up and aggressive, but he knows where 5e is. He's kind of just trying to bait 5e into the action, which is a bold choice when you don't have flash.
Well, for right now, Gravity already snapping back as 5e is like, yeah, I'm still here. So Caustic is allowed to stay, but take a look at where the pings went down. Both junglers now entering in to this bottom side, and keep in mind, no ultimates on the top side or TPs. So if this does break out for a random Dragon skirmish, it will be at worst a 3v3, at best a 4v4, as Gravity once again denied the opportunity to get a CS without losing HP.
With that FIFA work right now and with the Bam Scepter, Gravity's just healing up, so he's more than happy to take these trades. If he can hold 5e in this lane, that's a benefit. The problem is Drexel is not taking advantage of the fact that Gravity can and is kind of baiting this 1v2 situation. Salty's waiting around, and that means Blueby in the bot side is not actually getting any advantage.
He's kind of stuck in this position. Another place is going to go down. Good catch underneath the tower here as Caustic is going to eat a tower shot, but Gravity is more than okay. Now the wardage has been cleared out around the Dragon, so first Dragon take is going to go uOttawa play. For those keeping track of the feats, it is going to be 1-for-1. If this Dragon remains unchallenged, that is a big part. Lithuania is going to be looking for a little bit of a hunt, but honestly, no one else wants to stay, so it is going to be that finish. Very nicely done. 5e dodging away from the seed.
I just realized Bluebee's the AD carry.
Yes.
It's not Inori, is it? Or
No.
did Inori have a name change?
We are gonna wait for confirmation on that.
Okay, Sarnical actually proxying on ET here with this Sion. I don't know if I like this.
I mean, Los Ratones had a little bit of an idea, but here's the deal. You didn't die! He's out! Let's go! Really understanding the mastery of this Sion.
That's so disgusting. I hate that Sion can do that. I'm laughing super hard too, because when I was asking you uOttawa about, okay, tell me a little bit about your players. They told me, you know, Eteroy, the GOAT, he's a massive proxier, so it's really dangerous to kind of leave him on the island. But it's Sarnical who's proxying ET with the Sion, and it's not even worth it. He's not actually getting up in CS with this proxy either. He's not pushing ET back. ET's gonna get this shove in, and might even get chip damage on this turret if he wants to stick around.
It's the mental warfare, RMC. It's the mentality. It's like, listen, I'm in your head. And ET's like, I don't really care. I'm winning. So, you know, you take it for what you will. Right now, second pairing of grubs is coming up. Twofold reason for this, but uOttawa are first on the scene, meaning Lithuania and Salty are not going to be enjoying any sort of touch. A quick grab of one, though, means that the rest of uOttawa is looking to try and help out the rest of the team. We're looking at that Meganar, and ET does have it. That's going to be an in. Nice little push out, as that's only level 5, so that is going to be the feat granted over to uOttawa. No slam against the wall, though, as that's going to be the curtain called down. And it looks like Drexel Dragons are actually in a really, really rough spot as they lose a few more. First team battle is going to be a rough one for the Dragons. They are slain by these knights, by the cavalry of the universities. That will be uOttawa going ahead and taking 4 kills.
Sarnical body blocking at the end there. Blueby almost got sniped out by 42-year-old dad, and Kaz still wants his Kaz pushing up. Salty will be able to dissuade. overall, when all is said and done, Grubs actually survived, and now KC is back to get that one. You have to remember, for the feat to count for the neutrals, you have to get all 3 Grubs. That counts as 1. So has to dodge away.
Oh, Caustic, I'm not sure about this one, but that is going to be the grass to take it. Caustic is still alive, and it is going to be KC to grab it, but a little bit of a step up by 5e, granting a kill over to Blueby. Uh-oh.
Okay. That distracted KC as well. So KC kind of moved away from the Grubs.
You got smite. Oh, he got it! He smited! He got it.
Wow. Okay, so he did get all 3. So that's 2 of the major neutral objectives going the way of uOttawa Gray. If they get 1 more, they get the upgraded boots.
Yeah. And again, the thing about the boots is, obviously, if you want to buy up all the way, some people say it's not worth it. But here's the deal. Those goldies are going to be very much a lie here shortly. If uOttawa are allowed to gather 1 more of those seats, they are going to be looking a little bit more punch heavy in there. And Drexel Dragons are going to go, crap, well, we got to really rely on these plays. We got to rely on getting these first towers to start generating a little bit more gold to overcome some of this difference. Gravity does have that Bork currently in the pocket, but you're going up against Caustic, who opted first for the Leandries.
Yeah, and for Caustic as well, he might not necessarily be looking to trade with the Yone. One of the things with a lot of these majors like Victors, you can just focus on wave clear. As long as you don't get engaged on outside of turret range, you can kind of play it safe. I say that as Caustic is actually pushing up the lane. That could get risky. The lane that I think really favors uOttawa Gray is this top side. We're seeing ET really kind of bully out Sonic. That's been the case for most of this game. The range advantage that Nar has is huge, and ET has been constantly bullying. He's the biggest gold lead right now for uOttawa Gray, and that turret, it's already down to just 2 plates.
And I love it. I love how ET is playing this one. I don't think he got the full Demolish proc because it was Mini-Gnar that hit it, so it's still a lot. You didn't get the last plate, but it is the closest going down first tower, and there's no other lane that we are currently seeing a HP lead for Drexel Dragons on the tower. Gravity is currently hunting underneath their own tower as the bot lane is rotated up towards mid.
I'm a little bit worried for Gravity here. Okay, if Caustic had more mana, I think with just 1 more wave of Poke plus a dive would have been enough to secure this already. Chaos Storm does a ton of damage, but Gravity going to be able to survive for now. That's okay. He gets the push up. I'm curious to see if Caustic just goes back to this bot lane, or we start seeing some grouping up happening with uOttawa. Dragon is going to be spawning in 10 seconds. That should be the focus for uOttawa with the lead they have.
We don't have, you know, Otacon for another, what, 5.5 minutes, so it'll take some time, but are the eyes going to be looking that way? You can already see a little bit of bunching, as I think KC is already headed there, but take a look at where Lithuania is. I think Lithuania has already understood that they might not have that feel-good advantage right now in that bottom side, so you go ahead and start roaming out while you walk over a little bit of a bloom right there. A little bit of a trap from the gym.
Maybe trying to secure vision and control over the top side Herald, but the same time, Dragon's going to be gone by then completely uncontested, and with the pressure he's putting down, that's actually the harder side for Drexel to play.
There you go. Completed are the feats, and Drexel, our left, is going okay. Time to farm up. We lost the first team fight, and our composition does fall for the late game, and maybe that's what they can play for. In goes a little bit of that Gravity. Well, Gravity goes ahead and falls back, but the mid lane is going to be claimed here, as it's another Demolish proc to go down here. Force shot will take that tower, and now they get to fight Salty, who has to pop the Unbreakable Will, but you're stuck right in the middle. Crash out once again to get to safety, as Blueby, who we have confirmed is not a Norby, no name change there. It is a sub for Drexel Dragons. He's going to start trying to pump out some extra damage, but there is no response from Drexel.
He doesn't land from Lithuania, no Lilting Lullaby to follow up, and that's the Unbreakable burn from Salty, just as Herald spawns as well. That's a critical ultimate for Alistar. Without that, he's not actually that tanky.
And especially with Herald coming online, and then also ET bullying out Sardicle, this could be a really rough fight. As that's a quick crash down, good flash in, as 5 is going to help out. Salty's going to sacrifice their life to just try and keep the rest of the team alive. 4-shot wins it out. Lithuania running to try and catch, but doesn't even catch on the back line, and is only going to get 1, but the cleanse takes away that sleep. Meanwhile, on the top side, KC is helping out, annihilating extra as Blueby went down, but here comes Gravity. Gravity misses the Fate Seal, but is still going to be alive. Caustic is down here, cutting him off, and hoping to get some extra damage as the burn is just too good. Lithuania ain't gonna survive much longer, and Sarnical will go down. That is a 4-for-1 kill ratio for the side of uOttawa Gray.
ET maximizing their gains as well, trusting that Casey and 42-year-old dad can take this by themselves. He TP immediately to the bot lane to get the last remaining outer. Oh, that means Herald can be used directly onto the tier 2s. That should be a broken tier 2 turret when they decide to deploy. And uOttawa Gray is just accelerating the pace of this game. 6,000 gold ahead and just shy of 20 minutes.
I mean, I was gonna let the first team fight kind of roll by and say, okay, you're not too worried, but now 2 full team fights have gone by, and Drexel, they can only hunt for pieces here. They tried to jump onto Caustic, who now has the upgraded boots, and you're chilling. You had no minute, yet Caustic gets to walk away with just a little bit of help to fight.
Yeah, that fight started so oddly as well, that now leads to the situation we're in. Drexel had kind of even numbers to start. It was a 3v3, but Drexel's backup actually arrived quicker. Kaztec took forever to get into that fight, kind of walked across half the map in order to reach there in time, and he was just there for cleanup. So effectively, uOttawa Gray won that fight 4v5.
Oh. Alright, you're good, you're good.
And that's kind of worrying, no? The fact that you can't pick up the support, roam in your jungle, 5e gets to walk in there, drop wards where he wants, he doesn't have to worry. And for Drexel right now, I'm left kind of looking saying like, hey, how are they getting back into this game? They have a really good team fighting composition, but I don't think that's the way they need to play. They need to start looking for some picks. I need to see Lithuania get a critical lilting lullaby on a squishy, because you sure ain't cutting through those tanks anytime soon. KC and Eteroy and Meganathlon are hard to take down.
I mean, we quite literally saw Lithuania looking for that. The hard chase on the 42-year-old dad, who was able to kite that all the way back to what was that, I think, tower range? Very close, too. It just goes to show that uOttawa Gray are also identifying what Drexel Dragons are hoping to do here. And especially with the Hextech Drake coming up in about 1 minute 30 seconds, that could amplify this game even further. As now Blueby might be looking to get caught here. No flash available for KC, so that will be Blueby safe, even from the rock.
A little bit surprised we didn't see the Impale come through from Casey once we saw the initial kind of arcane flash come through from Blueby. His flash is still down as well. They're thinking about Gravity Music. They have enough burst if they can CC him. No, 5e!
I'm not sure if 5e was saying I don't want to go for it or not, and maybe let Casey go over, because that's what they're kind of looking for. They are going to dive underneath here, but immediately pull a U-turn, and Lithuania has joined in because the Scion jumped in, flashed over the wall. 42-year-old dad said no. We're not playing this game, especially because Dragon is up in such short notice and ET is pushing on this top side, and thankfully we've drawn a TP, so Sarnical forced to respond up there.
Thankfully for uOttawa, not so much for Drexel. As you were calling, Orbital, Dragon spawning in 30 seconds. And Sarnical using that TP as well as his ultimate means he might not be present for this fight. And sure, ET doesn't necessarily have his teleport either to join this fight, but if he walks down first, he has the prio. He's got the pressure. He can move before Sarnical can.
And it's just something that we are constantly thinking about, considering how much Drexel needs to focus on this late game. They are about 7k behind, and they have to find a way to make up that ground, or at least push the minutes longer. Currently, they are trying their best. They are hopefully going to get some more gold and then be able to teamfight later. But at the current moment, they are not in control of this game. You can see them splitting up towards the top side, just clearing out some wards here. Maybe looking at the Otacon or just helping push down this tower, as KC is like, sweet, free dragon.
Yep, and it feels like that's been the case last couple of Dragons. 5e getting caught out again. Has flash available if he needs it.
I mean, you're going to go ahead and body block, and I think everyone's safe. And once again, 5e and 42-year-old dad are like, really? That's your engage?
Yeah, I mean, sure, you blew the flash out of 5e, and that's good, but you had to use the Lilting Lullaby. And without the Lilting Lullaby right now for Drexel, it's scary. It's got to be Sarnical just kind of engaging with the unstoppable onslaught in your face. I'm curious to see if he's tanky enough to be able to survive. I'm not seeing a lot of armor in his build just yet, unfortunately. Only has the Sunfire Cape built up, and that means that that health bar he has is deceptively tanky. It looks like there's a lot there, but without the armor to back it up, he will get shredded down.
Shredding through these champs is the name of the game, considering we're seeing so much shred come out. The Black Cleaver for ET right now, extra burn behind, or actual extra pump out with the ability haste on Caustic as you go ahead and get that Cosmic Drive. And then you follow through, 42-year-old dad just bumping up the execution value, having that executioners in there. It's just like, this is great. I have no idea what you guys are talking about. This is another chunk coming out. As we do see Octagon being started up here, this should give an extra life over, or you're just using it to bait right now, as that's going to be a knockup only on one. And Drexel, I don't think you can fight this unless you get a great Lilting Lullaby. It ain't in your favor, but it is enough to force uOttawa off.
Yeah, it's always really dangerous with Octagon because the lower the health, the more damage Raish is going to do as well. Key to note, there's also the risk of a TP flank coming through. Gravity had just gone back to base, has a teleport available. There's no flank ward, but the wave was pushing up. And this back and forth, uOttawa is okay with it. They just don't want to die at Octagon. ET was doing good work in the bot lane, actually managed to get that 50 first.
Oh, 5e with the Hextech Flash, and that's going to be pinning against the wall, so now they're going to look. Caustic gets in just in time. Great Storm into the Magna Storm as well, so the damage just melts through Salty, and you TP directly into the Storm, as I don't think Gravity wanted to make use of that one. A cleanup by 5e on the back lines for 4, as that's an ace for 0 for uOttawa.
Clean ace, not a body hit the floor for uOttawa. Great. They get the ace, they get Octagon to boot as well, Orbital, and this feels like the death knell this game for Drexel Dragons. The fight didn't even look bad for them. Yeah, okay, they got engaged on by KC, but uOttawa didn't feel like they were fully ready to turn on it. They weren't able to maximize the CC that 5e and KC put down, and it didn't even matter. The wallets of uOttawa were enough to win that one, and it only gets worse for Drexel.
You know what's scarier than a heavy wallet that is currently carrying about 9 to 10k worth of gold? It's a team that knows how to swing that wallet with efficiency, understanding that you have the space to play with, that you have that amount of gold, that you can get away with stuff like this because you have that extra recall in the bucket and still not dying, because Casey is going to bail you out. As 42-year-old dad says, get out of here. That will be the curtain call, finding nothing, because the game was over in Act 2 right there. That has to hurt for Blueby.
I feel like we need to call Child Protective Services. Dad's not a bit. Dad's being violent right now.
Oh, they're going to continue. Lithuania flashing away. But look at that grass. That grass is huge. And you leave Sarnicle alone underneath the tower. You do one last roar, one last charge, and you get nothing. 24.5-minute inhibitor going down.
It's the final push. Lithuania, Gravity, and Salty here to kind of defend. Actually, it might be enough. Oh, never mind. I take that back.
Well, Gravity gets a good ult in the backside, and maybe a TP to come out, because that is going to be Caustic still melting through all the members. The die straight into the back line, though, as Caustic might not enjoy it. Quick revive, though, as another Heartsteel proc goes off, as Casey is just actually farming at this point. Keep in mind, this was a 4v5 type of fight. There were very few other members, and that is going to be uOttawa like, we got to revive. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't care that I'm currently here, because whoop, I am right back at my base.
Okay, that's still a decent amount of gold going the way of Drexel. But one of the things I hate most about Voracious Octagon is the GA prevents the bounces from going up. So yeah, you get 200 gold per kill or per shutdown with the GA running. But you see all those bounties on the side of uOttawa Grey? They're still there. It's a fast reset, and uOttawa Grey, they waste no time rushing the Baron to look for another bounty to try.
The most annoying part as well, uOttawa are like, great, we just got Baron. Guess what's up in about 20 seconds? If this is not the most, like, painful way to watch the game peel away, uOttawa could quite literally, if they didn't want to chase down mid, go straight to Jag and force another fight, or just claim the soul for themselves.
I mean, I go for the soul anyways. It's about it's literally en route. Like, Casey's coming out of base anyhow. Might as well take those Hex Gates. And Drexel, well, this ain't their dragon. They can't look for it. Aztec?
Caustic running front line right now, but still fairly tanky, as that's going to be True Shot for Raw, doing nothing, as Lithuania is just gone. You don't have GA or anything. You don't have Zhonya's to help save your team or yourself, as 5e is actually in a little bit of a rush drop, tried to flash into the stun on the backline. Caustic is now legendary, taking out that Alistar, but that's not who we're focused on. Right now, we are focused on Gravity getting chunked out. ET slams Gravity back home, and sometimes you wish Gravity wasn't a thing, because that will be your doom. Sarnicle is the only one alive yet again as that Scion. And unfortunately, you're not the Ballast. You are dead. It's an ace for uOttawa Gray with their 4th or 5th straight team fight win to take game number 1.
Well, Orbital, you asked, and they delivered. You wanted gravity to not be a thing? uOttawa Gray made it happen. They also made Drexel Dragons not a thing in game 1. And they did it so incredibly well as well. Casey and Kaztech, the two of them dominated the early game. It felt like they're everywhere. And ET in the 1v1 just crushed it. We saw Sarnicle proxy. At that point, it almost felt like he was forced to proxy. If he just stayed in lane regular standard, he was getting shoved in. His turret was losing out, and he was taking risks to try and minimize the plate loss. And for Drexel Dragons, hey, we got to remember as well, they've got not just one sub tonight. It looks like they're running 2 subs. Blueby and Gravity coming in. This is not their starting roster, and unfortunately, we get to see what uOttawa looks like when they've got their starters, and we don't get to see what Drexel looks like with their starters.
I mean, uOttawa Gray looking very, very comfortable into this. Now, granted, we aren't going to see the Victor. We're not going to see the Gnar. We're not going to see a lot of these champions, actually all these champions, come game number 2. So maybe that's a chance for Drexel to be able to fight back. But that does depend on how the draft shakes out. So we are going to go to a very short break. Get ready for game number 2. And in this opening matchup here for the NECC, I'm extremely excited to see what we have in store. Don't go anywhere. Placements are placements and live is live, I think is what uOttawa Gray decided to say. They came out with all 5 members, threw down with the best of them, and I have never seen, I think, a team look that cohesive in week 1. Everything from the top to jungle to mid to bottom lane looks so dang good. Even if we did see not just 1 sub, but 2. Blueby stepping in and unfortunately having a little bit of a rough time.
You know, and overall, it's funny because when I talked to Yati, the manager for uOttawa Gray, he was saying like, in the words of Yamato Cannon, he was gonna boil that brother KC, and that was in reference to KC not showing up for the placement matches, unfortunately. And I can kind of see why, right? Like, KC's in, he was all over the map, he was dominating the early game, he was setting the pace, and when he's back in, you can see uOttawa Gray already getting their revenge on Drexel. That was not just a win, that was a crushing victory. And when I look at Drexel right now, I don't know what to kind of expect from them, right? 2 substitutes coming in. And I'm going to be honest, I think Gravity did a great job actually in the mid lane. He was surviving a lot of the 2v1 pressure coming through from 5e and Kaztek. 5e's constant roams to the mid lane. My big question mark is actually more on Blueby right now, because I'm not familiar with his playstyle. If it was Nori B, I was expecting Salty to play a bit more lane dominant, sit in that lane, look for the 2v2s, because he's a very energetic player. But now with Blueby, and if Blueby is wanting to play safe and skill up, which is what it kind of looked like on his Ezreal for me, his late game mechanics were fine, but it didn't feel like he was pressuring early game. If that's the case, then Salty roaming, even though it didn't accomplish much, might just be a reaction to the stylistic differences between the AD carries. Again, I don't know, and one game isn't everything to go off of. We'll have to see what happens in game 2, what Blueby actually wants to run, and whether we see the supports roam just as heavily in the second game.
And who gets to be that first rotation? I want to point out, at least from what I saw, 50 to 60% of the first roams out of that bottom lane came from 5e. 5e every single time, stepping up, getting into that mid lane. And then after about the 3rd or 4th time, we saw Salty being like, okay, I have to respond. I have to go and follow if we want a chance. Either helping out Gravity, who is suffering in the mid lane, and also helping Lithuania, which I did want to touch on because we kept talking about this lulting lullaby. It can have such a driving impact in a game, especially when trying to catch the likes of non-mobile mids and ADCs, such as the Jhin, such as this Victor. I saw, I think, 0 catches. The only sleep I saw was once, and it was cleansed by the likes of 42-year-old Dad.
Yeah, or it was blocked by, 5e or somebody else, whether it was Casey, I don't think Atara got caught by that, but there was always somebody body blocking for these immobile carries that you're talking about, Orbital. I fully agree with that. And it does surprise me a little bit, like I said, when we were talking about Lithuania and last draft, I was thinking things like Nunu, like Wukong. Now, Wukong got banned, but to me, I think of Lithuania as an aggressive jungler, someone who makes action happen, and Lilia can do that later. But it felt like that was the problem for Drexel. A lot of their players can do things later. They need to do things now in the early game, pre-20 minutes. They didn't have that. So we'll see if they correct that in draft. I do believe uOttawa will be blue side, and there's still a couple of OPs open. Varus was neither picked nor banned in game 1, so that's still potentially on the table. I wonder if we do see that being changed up, whether we do see Drexel kind of ban that going into game 2, or whether they just go for blue. Well, they didn't go for blue side, or whether they. Yeah, if they don't pick it, I'm a little bit dicey. 42-year-old Dad does play it, and with the Ezreal off the table, his most played is still that Varus, and I expect to see that being picked up if not.
I mean, not just that, we're also taking a look at the top side where we mentioned Sarnical, usually a bruiser type player, has been swapping to the tanks here, had the Scion, and I have to say the Scion looked rough. Granted, I believe it got counterpicked in there. It was looking a little bit rough because of ET, who slayed up there. Let's talk about that as well. As we get loaded into draft, we talked about how ET was doing so well, even against this type of a proxy style. And again, when we mentioned that the entirety of uOttawa Gray looks so powerful, I'm expecting it to happen again, but ET, I wonder how they're going to shut down this top lane once again.
Well, for one, he could have his pocket pick. ET is known to be a very prolific Kled player, and that wasn't picked or banned. Granted, he did see the
No, Kled was banned.
Before he picked the
Kled was banned.
Yes. Okay,
I did want to point that out because I saw we didn't talk about the Camille and Kled bans that came out in round 2.
True. Okay. So, yeah, I'm actually curious to see if Eteroy blind picks this time or they get counter pick to come through. And I think a lot of that will depend on Drexel because they are on the red side, right? Do they want to save counter pick for Sarnical in that top lane? Like we said, Sarnical has moved away from those bruisers towards a lot of the tanks. And if he continues to play tank in this series, then I expect him to blind and save counter pick for maybe Gravity in the mid lane, or heck, you could maybe even give it to Salty as a support to try and counter pick, because we do see a lot of times support counter pick decide how a 2v2 might go.
I mean, considering we saw 2 thrown out there in round 2 of uOttawa's side, they were like, yeah, supports are definitely what we want to focus on. But we are seeing something that we have seen through Fearless, which a lot of people have also criticized about the Fearless style. I mean, these are the same bans. 4 for 4 so far. I'm wondering if we're going to get 6 for 6 unless like a random non-sequitur decides to come out.
Yeah, I believe it's the Wukong. Yep, there we go. And it was the Viego that Drexel banned in game 1 in their first phase. I'm going to be honest, a lot of times the teams don't swap sides. If it ain't broke, why fix it? That said, Orbital, if they do that, Varus is open.
Yeah.
Varus versus Pickable. I almost feel like I'd rather ban the Varus than the Viego. Like, giving Viego over to Casey doesn't feel as scary. And Casey already got his hands on the Skarner last game. Such an OP pick. Such a meta-strong champion. And we saw what he could do with the meta-strong champions. They're there for a reason. Yep, sure enough, the Varus gets picked up.
At this point, we're both psychics. At this point, we are in the draft room, like, actually working this out. Like, I think this is the cleanest that we've seen so far, because it is kind of frustrating. When we call this out, especially with Drexel kind of throwing that down, what's the response? They're going for a Kog'Maw, which is wild, because we know how Salty wants to play, and if you're going to go utility, I mean, this is the best or must-need utility support ADC out there. Unless that's mid lane, I don't know.
It could be a mid cog. That I think would be a potential
that might
flex
actually...
if they want to do this. Jace, another potential flex. We're seeing it mostly in the top lane. Jace right now still has a lot of different builds. He'll get nerfed NECC patch on his base damages, because right now he is very dominant in the top side. But Orbital, you see, this is my concern if you're picking Jace early. If it goes to the top lane, right, you can counter pick it, and the Kled can now be picked early. Doesn't have to be picked in the second phase, and you can't ban it because you already banned everything else you wanted, which is the Shaco, the Hui, and the Viego.
I am also, I just want to point out, I am leaning towards Kog'Maw in the mid, because you're setting up a pretty nice poke scenario if you have that Jace and Kog'Maw both trying to throw down poke, and you try and keep everyone away. Xin Zhao, great disengage tool to come out here. This would put a lot more emphasis into the Lithuania's hands, which I really was hoping for. But that J4 Kled combo is going to be menacing in any capacity as we head into second ban set.
Yeah, and Xin Zhao creating space for the Kog'Maw, whether it be mid or bot lane. Now for Drexel, they're still looking for a support and potentially one of their solo lanes, or AD carry, depending on where this cog's going. And if you're looking for support, as you mentioned, enchanters, utility supports need to come through. The Jan's already banned Lulu. There we go. There's the ban. And maybe something like the Milio to take away, because Milio would just give even more safety to this Kog'Maw. You'd have to knock back as well to try and disengage the likes of the Kled diving backline.
All right, well, we got some disrespect out of Drexel when they didn't ban something in that fourth slot. No, I'm joking. We'll figure out which one that is. We will get words in our ears eventually, but I like the fact that you called it out. Once again, this is now the second straight game where we have seen supports banned out in that bottom rotation against Drexel, which is now fully set. I believe I got words. I will have to have that repeated one more time because my ears don't work. My mouth does, which is great. We had Pyke banned away, which does lead into the fact that we had mentioned there is a Pyke fanatic somewhere in this draft.
Yeah, 5e is the one who likes his Pyke. So makes sense to take that away. And the other ban was a Renata. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I think Renata as well as a champion who can kind of mess you up when you see this sort of engage come through. Kog'Maw can mess up your own team. Sorry, I know the Ari is coming through for the side of uOttawa when they're picking, but I want to talk about this Maokai on Drexel's side for a second, because this Maokai, is it top Maokai or support Maokai? Because Xin Zhao's already been picked. That's going jungle. That goes nowhere else.
I mean, I think we've seen Maokai's extend out at some points, and granted, this could still be a Kog'Maw ADC. It could still very heavily lean into Kog'Maw ADC, Jace mid into the Maokai top with the Xin Zhao jungle. That's a Maokai support. At the end of the day, that's a Maokai support. We got a Malphite in the top side. Well, maybe interchangeable depending if you want to face off against the Kled or not.
Okay, this is really interesting now with how the draft has turned out. I like the Malphite pick into the Kled specifically, Overlord. That's going to be nice for the matchup. And you kind of baited it out with the Jace, and then the Jace goes into the mid lane. But it does make some awkward situations. Ahri into Jace is a lane that Ahri will be happy to play into. And you don't usually see as much tank Jace in the mid lane. And with this composition, I almost feel like you can't, I don't know if you want to afford a tank Jace. You don't have enough damage. Kog'Maw by himself is great shredding tanks, but with the amount of threat on this team, which can dive that backline, if you're putting all your eggs into the Kog'Maw basket without an enchanter, that's really risky. And it's not an enchanter they gave him. They gave him Maokai, which, hey, Maokai is great for creating space. I like the pick, but then who's buffing the Kog'Maw? Your Kog'Maw is going to be an issue. And the 2v2 as well, Orbital. Rakan Varus into Kog Maokai. That's really tough for the Kog'Maw because Kog'Maw wants to farm up. He's not going to win these 2v2 trades very, very well. Varus can shred you and burst you down, and Kog'Maw ain't that tacky. He's actually kind of squishy.
I mean, there's a reason he's in the ADC role. I mean, let's put it right there. But granted,
Yeah.
on the other side, uOttawa have once again, I feel, drafted an amazing composition here. The synergy between all five makes a lot of sense with the direction they're hoping to go. This is not a straightforward face roll, except they can if they want to with the Kled, but they can scatter so well. The guerrilla warfare that can come out from this composition is impeccable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the team fighting is nothing to scoff at, of course, right? They've got the likes of a Jarvan, they've got Varus as well. His ultimate, the Corrupted Chains, works well into AoE. But as you mentioned, this is more about individual agency for the team. In a team fight, straight up team fight, if Drexel play this right, they can and should win the team fight. But if they can't get multiple members of uOttawa in the initial engage, that's when things start to go wrong because of all the agency, multiple carries, right? It's not all about the Varus. It's not all about 42-year-old dad. Eteroy can carry on the Kled. We can see Kaztek potentially carry if he can get the squishies down. So there's a lot of options here for uOttawa, and the snowball is strong with this one. One thing with Kled is if Kled gets ahead, he's always really good at diving you. With the Skrull remount and everything, he can just dive and drop the aggro, reset, and get out very, very safely. So for Drexel, they kind of have to make sure that they don't lose out the early game they did last game. If they can stay even, then the mid game is going to get a lot more interesting. They have really good team fight if they can get it off properly, if they can get Sarnical specifically onto multiple members with that Malphite ultimate.
And I'm hoping so, because honestly, as someone that doesn't care about bot lane as much, sorry all bot laners out there, but my boy Malphite, Malphite is my guy. I can't play top lane for crap. I play like Mordekaiser, Malphite, that's about it. I also play a mid, don't worry about that either. But I do want to see this R5 Malphite, this linchpin piece that obviously Drexel had trouble initiating, finding those engagements, getting towards that back line. They literally took this rock and said, this is the one option that you cannot mess up. Do you like that for Drexel, considering how rough the previous game was?
I like the simplicity of the idea overall, but one of the problems with Malphite, and the reason why we don't see him a ton in pro play, is he's a bit of a one-button Boris, right? If you miss the Unstoppable Force, he doesn't bring a lot to the rest of that fight. So for Sarnical, you got to press that R properly. You got to get it on the right members, on multiple members as well, because there's so many carry threats. If anything, I'm actually looking a bit more at Lithuania, not so much for the teamfight engage later on, but for just trying to get his lanes ahead a little bit, because if the Malphite falls too far behind, then Sarnical won't be able to have impact. It's really hard to get a good ultimate off when you're falling behind, when you're just getting melted on the way in. So I'm looking at Lithuania to make sure that that isn't the case, that you have some winning lanes you can try and play through, compared to last game where it felt like Casey just took over the map right from the get-go.
I mean, Casey was just like, hey, I'm happy, and with the J4, I got level 2s and all. Well, I mean, we're chilling, we're going ahead, you know, flag and drag. We can go ahead and even throw down with every single lane. I mean, we've seen J4s, which granted, I don't think this season is very prominent, but we've seen J4s before. If you're in a rough spot, literally sacrifice the jungle to just run through lanes and try and get your team ahead. Now, that is very solo queue-esque. I don't think we're going to see it here because there are a lot of feats in play. But, of course, we'll leave that to the players to decide, because we are going to go to a very short break. Make sure all the clients and connectivities are set to go, because we want to make sure this Game 2 is solid, rock solid, if you will. Don't go anywhere, the NECC. We'll be right back. Like we said, rock solid. We're getting into it, and uOttawa Gray are hoping to get a solid series under their belt as we're straight into another pause here because we had a lot of fun. So let's go right back to this and talk about the fact that this is, once again, uOttawa saying we're most likely going to win. And I want to talk about the fashion that they did win in game number 1. 5 straight team fights, I'm pretty sure, is what ran them that entire game. Taking a look down the line a little bit more, as we have, I believe that is Blueby on an AP Kog'Maw on the bot side. It's I'm not gonna lie, I'm liking uOttawa's comp more and more.
Yeah, well, to be fair, for Kog'Maw, a lot of his ability, or his main ability that makes him so strong is the Bioarcane Barrage. It's his W. True. And that actually skills off AP anyways, for your AP, for the percent health shred. So it's not uncommon to actually see AP being built on Kog'Maw, and more than anything else, will probably just be on-hit Kog'Maw, because you do the most damage by auto-attacking as fast as you possibly can. Also, it does balance out the Jace in the mid lane, so not too worried if we do actually see more AP come through than just like the usual sort of hybrid on-hit attack speed style Kog'Maw that we see in bot lanes.
Okay. Well, we'll give credit where credit is due. I'm still not liking the fact that there's no extra support behind there. You literally got a Maokai that's a tree and just like, bye Kog'Maw, I'll see you later. I gotta follow the team real quick. I'm headed off to Narnia, and you're gonna be left in the real world, where time decides to actually pass by very cleanly, because we haven't even touched on one champion that will quite literally bypass everyone else. We have the Rakan in here that can charm everyone up, deny any jump in, the engage tools. This was one of the best, in my opinion, B5 pickups that you could grab in that support role, considering we had 4 support bans. 2 from either side.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the rest of the composition as well. You talk about Rakan diving a backline, Ari can dive a backline, Kled literally charges and brings the entire team potentially into the backline as well. J4 with the flag and drag gets right into the back. Like, it feels like any of these components could have been replaced by any other champion, and the threat to the backline would still have been there. So it's such a hard fight for Blueby to be able to pilot through. It's really tough from him. And that's why for Gravity, I'm fully expecting to see like a full damage Jace come through, lethality Jace, so that they at least have a backup option, and then have them split. If they're standing next to each other, sure, the Malphite's on your team, but the enemy team's got a lot of ways to dive. If you're next to each other, there's still a lot of AoE that can come through. And Orbital, you were talking a little bit about the way uOttawa won game 1. Yeah, I agree with you. I think they saw how they won game 1. They're expecting to replicate the success in game 2. They have carries, they have kill threat in every single lane. And I want to see KC just get in there right from the get-go. Level 2, level 3 ganks. Which lane? Any lane. All of it works.
Well, one of those lanes is in the river, which is a technical lane in its own, just a little bit more watery. As we go ahead and see a chance in, which I do kind of like with Gravity on this Jace. You have an extra rotation on the spell, so it's appreciated. You can try and get some extra damage down. Again, I appreciate this. I like when teams do decide to get a little bit silly. They got the ward as well, so it's absolutely worth.
Okay, first gold advantage to Drexel. First ward blood. I feel like there should be a feat for clearing vision.
No, we don't get supports any type of love. What are you talking about?
We used to cheer for ward kills. What was that? Season 3? Season 4? People used to cheer when a ward got taken down at Worlds.
Well, that's because that means that the players are looking at actually using like ward clearing techniques, right? Like, we're in NA, no one cares about that usually. I mean, have you seen my solo queue games? I have like 10 vision score on everyone.
Well, bro, that's why you're not playing for Drexel, because they cared about wards.
Real.
Okay, for now, standard lanes across the board. Not too much early vision come down. Most of the vision coming down from the side of Drexel Dragons. There we go, the late ward from Kaztech. And that's going to be important, because both these junglers, with the champions they have, can gank early. And you do want to be tracking where they're looking for. You don't want to be giving up first blood, especially for Drexel Dragons. We've seen what happens when uOttawa gets it early.
Okay, so this is another thing that I was curious about. Gravity, if we remember, Caustic and Gravity were able to exchange some blows, but Gravity was on the receiving end of it quite a bit in the mid lane earlier because of that Yone setup. This time around, Jace does have a penchant for being willing to trade in the early game. So I am curious to see how it goes, but this bot side, once again, double knock up, ease of access, as now Salty is just trying to help out here. Potion's being burned early on as well as Blueby and Salty saying, all right, screw game 1. Game 2 is all what it's about. Blueby is kind of shuffling into a rough spot here. That's going to be another dash in as that's a flash up from Blueby early. And that's going to be a Ignite as 5-0 is running away, but First Blood is going to go one way or another. And it's going to be 42-year-old dad by a millisecond, quite literally. Salty now realizing that you can't really go up against an ADC because Halo Blades is now up as well. Did you knock out the arrow? Oh my god, I think you knocked out the Q. You knocked out the Q, so no piercing damage. So Salty gets the kill.
And on top of that, Blueby had the teleport as well, so they were kind of just trying to stall it out. As long as Salty doesn't go down, that would have been a win in their favor. I'd love to see Lithuania coming back in for the regang.
Oh my gosh! These are denials of abilities, by the way. It is one of the most frustrating things to see your abilities get canceled midway.
Twice now Drexel has been able to clutch that out, and we were talking so much about the uOttawa snowball. Well, Drexel are the ones to burst off into the lead. They get the early 3 kills down. They get the feat to go with it. And we called for action from Lithuania. He's doing it. We're seeing Blueby and Salty feeling really strong, really confident in lane. Now we get to see, can Drexel snowball the same way uOttawa showed us?
Or are we going to see uOttawa be able to turtle up a little bit and understand, hey, early game doesn't always make or break this scene. We still got a little bit of time. Still got some other movements around the map that we could work with. But of course, only time will tell. But loving the shakeup here as now we get to see Sarnacle being able to push his wave under the tower very heavily. And ET, no worries. Like, you're perfectly okay capturing this wave. And it is going to be another ward in the top side here. I think Sarnacle did place that down. No, you still have it in your hands. It's just a recall. No, you did place it. Okay, I was like, man, you're standing on top of it. You're going to be okay.
He's got a second ward, with the trinket, kind of stored that one up. Ivy getting caught out, but it's a Rakan. He's slippery, no kill converted. It does give priority in this bot side to the side of Drexel Dragons, but with the timing of that Dragon spawn, Lithuania probably won't be in the area. It's about 30 seconds before it comes back up. Or before it comes up at all this game.
I was about to say, what dragons are you looking at? You've been watching too many Dragon Tamer.
I was looking at the Drexel Dragons. They went down.
Okay. You know what? I'll give that one to you. It is true though. First dragon coming up here in just a few. Not only that, Grub will be following shortly behind, and how it panned out last time. uOttawa had an advantage as Blueby. Where did 5-0 go? 5-0 died all the way closer to where Blueby is.
I'm actually really shocked this bot lane is going the way it is. Varus is actually pretty strong at some of these early trades, and 42-year-old dad is running Halo Blades. So he was looking to be able to win out these short trades early, but somehow Blueby and Salty, from the first fight we saw, they were playing Vision very, very well. They were playing the space very, very well. I don't know what happened this second time, but how is Rakan constantly getting caught?
Well, that time it wasn't, as 5e quite literally respawned, rushed up mid, and helped Caustic get the first kill.
Finally, 5e able to vent his frustration a little bit with a good roam into the mid lane. Gravity unfortunately didn't have the flash available. Had to use it earlier when we saw Lithuania get the kill on KC, and won't have the TP to get back in on him.
But we are going to have a level 6 versus level 6 as KC is joined in, but realizing you're in a really rough spot as Salty and Lithuania both read this like a book, and now you got to leave KC to rest. It's just going to be a death here as that is Sarnacle to pick up a kill for themselves, but now 5e roaming into the top side, realizing we can't really do this one, so Drexel once again rebuking an engagement.
I just love how Casey starts that fight in river and ends the fight near the enemy turret because of all the displacement that came through. And that's without the Crescent Guard from Lithuania as well. 5e overextending again.
And this is multiple times that we're seeing these catches. I want to point that out. Drexel, whether intentional or unintentional, are denying a lot of the escape tools that uOttawa would be using to dive in and out of these fights.
Yeah, just the sheer amount of disruption in CC that can come through. And now 5e is kind of low on health. Yeah, he's got half health. Can they even contest this?
I mean, they're going to try, but unfortunately it's KC. Respawn to possible death, but this is a 4v4. Caustic trying to run away, gets a huge orb across multiple, and that might be enough damage as Caustic is going to stay alive, because guess what? In goes ET. ET helping out massively as they're going to chase into enemy jungle, and it's a turnaround of multiple kills. One more punch with the head means Sarnacle is on a killing spree, but that's still ET to bank 3.
like I've got whiplash watching this Orbital. What on earth? Drexel Dragons were handling the early game so incredibly well, and then it just felt like uOttawa were able to kind of play that very slowly, very patiently. They got all the poke down, and they got all the cluster up onto Drexel Dragons. Really unfortunate thing as well for the Dragons is that Sarnico is the one picking up all the kills, and he's not running an AP ML fight. This is a tank ML fight, so getting all that gold, great in the 1v1. He slows down ET. But later on in the team fights, he's not going to have as much impact as ET will with his 3 kills in pocket when he's a threat who can actually dive back lines and threaten carries.
You know what the only answer to this is? You gotta build AP. Gotta go AP. Just go ahead and send it. You gotta grab that AP and just rock out. It's... I gotta agree though, it's dangerous because not only that, on the bottom side, Salty was also the recipient of 2 of the 3 kills in the bottom lane. Keep that in mind as... We're gonna let that one stew for a little bit.
Okay,
Alright, let's look at the bot lane. Let's take a look at this, because 5e 42-year-old dad, we're... I'm so tired, RMC. I don't know what's going on here. We're looking at some chaos. And
I'm
not
tired,
rotating towards me.
and I still don't know what's happening right now. Yeah, let's talk about 42-year-old dad instead of the bot lane, because he has not had the best start to this game so far. And, you know, 5B is not sitting in his bot lane whatsoever.
Yes, do this to him. You know what? You know what Gravity would have liked there? His flash.
Gravity has not been able to hold his flash. I feel so bad for him. Everybody keeps going to this mid lane. KC's here all the time. 5B's here all the time. And by the time Booby and Salty decide to come up, it's kind of too late. 5B should be fine.
And you know what? He's like only 3 deaths in. He'll be fine, right? Yeah, like that's okay. That's okay. Caustic on the other side though does have to burn the Spirit Rush, so you are gonna get out of that situation. But you're also low mana, meaning you are losing prio around this dragon, which is why you're bringing out 42-year-old dad. Is this gonna be a fight break out here? I don't know if you have enough charge. You do have the wall, but you're still ignited. But that's gonna be a nice flag and drag, meaning this is huge opportunity for 42-year-old dad. Yes, you do 2 for 2, but guess who's pumping out the damage? Another arrow rocking out, as that's a triple now to the dad, who is looking swole and fit. A flash forward to deny as Blueby flashes just onto the top of the barrel, but that's over the wall to help KC with the save as uOttawa once again win the team fight. Oh, I lied.
That was a one-way trip for KC, but it was necessary, Orbital. Even in a situation like that, 2v1, Blueby was winning that fight with 42-year-old dad, and 42-year-old dad was the one who flashed in aggressively thinking, I can take this. For uOttawa, that's still a win for them. They get more kills than they do deaths, and more importantly, they got it on the right person. We talked about how Blueby, sure, him and Salty were doing great in the bot lane, but Salty picked up some of the kills. That fight, 42-year-old dad went from like, was it 1-1-1 to 4-1-1? He picked up the bulk of the kills, and that's critical for AD carries.
At this point, nobody cares that 5E's dying, by the way. Like, it's quite literally, I'm sitting there like, I'm not even worried, as that's going to be a nice one to come out here. 5E's actually alive. All right, I'm so sorry I disrespected you, 5E. You died 4 times, and I was like, I thought a 5th was on the way. I am so sorry.
That's fine. I'm clenching right now every time I see 5E go in. Like, he's going.
To be fair, I think 5E was clenching as well. I think you lived on like 50.
No, man, 5E, not even sweating. Not even close. He knew he was fine. He knew he was okay. This does, however, mean that 5E's not in the area, so Drexel Dragons will have the numbers advantage, and uOttawa can't much upon this dragon whatsoever.
And taking a look at where these are all placed, by the way, this would actually put, I believe, uOttawa and Drexel into a 1-1 state for the large camp feed. So we are taking a look, keeping track of that. uOttawa actually aiming towards that top side, as ET is actually the one proxying in the top side now and saying, this is how you proxy. This is how you deal with a top lane matchup.
I love how last game we're like, Sarnicle's the one.
No. No. Hey, Gravity, I'm not gonna lie. I don't even think Flash would have saved you there. A tower dive that you mentioned, RMC, all the way at draft. What does a Kled like to do when you're ahead? Tower dive.
Yeah, and the way he can do that charge, every time that ultimate is up, Gravity's got to be worried, because like you said, even a flash isn't going to save you there. As a Jace, what do you do in this sort of situation? There's just so much dive that Gravity doesn't get to play the game, and Orbital, it feels like ET, this is his game right now. This is his comfort champion, the champion that he plays the most frequently. He gets the proxy. He saw Sarnical proxy in game 1, and he's like, hold my drink. I'm going to show you how to proxy. You proxy my first turret, I will proxy your second turret and your mid turret right now.
Look at the gold, by the way. Look at the gold just powering up. This is now also, I believe, the second time ET is rocking the coal. The first one was completed as well in game 1. This time, starting at 33 stacks left. Like, this is ET still saying, I'm going to dominate. Now, on the bot side, we already talked about the fact that 42-year-old Dad has had some struggles. Right now, still struggling here, as that is going to be a very nice shutdown for Blueby, who has now been able to accumulate 4 total kills.
Yeah, and Blueby, right, he's got to be the carry. We talked so much about how, okay, if Gravity doesn't go damage, if he goes tank, you've only got 1 damage threat. Now, he's not going tank, but he's also not got gold and can't make the plays happen. So Blueby's going to have to be the one to carry these fights. Gravity has to watch out. No flash. Can Casey get in range?
It came up just in time for him to stay alive. But that does mean that this is going to be a 3-on-1 here in the bot side, as this is going to be another tower dive check. Caustic is going to go ahead and get out of there. But look at this hold here. This is 5e continuously just holding on to this piece. We mentioned it before, Blueby opting into that poke Kog'Maw build. So I am liking this right now. You have the Gunblade, not Gunblade, but Luden's companion in hand.
Yeah, and that's actually an interesting build. That's usually what we see from mid lane Kog'Maw. So Blueby actually running this is slightly unusual. Yeah, we said this build. Gravity doesn't even have flash either. We know that for a fact.
It's your daily check in the mid lane. That's kind of what it is right there. Like, ET's like, listen, door check real quick. Do you hold on? And unfortunately, you had a friend over, and your friend's going to go down for the check as well.
And I just feel so bad for Gravity, because actually I feel bad for Sarnical as well, because Sarnical picked the Malphite as a counter to Kled, and props to Sarnical. Sarnical actually did well in lane. It felt like ET couldn't make anything happen, and Sarnical was actually winning up top, and then one fight goes wrong, ET picks up 3 kills, and suddenly the top side is hard for Malphite to play. And even worse, it's hard for Gravity in the mid lane to play as well. We talked about the repeat gang stop in the mid lane. Now that that turret's gone, Blueby's the one I'm worried about, because I could fully see ET going the exact same route into the bot side, diving that outer turret, and 42-year-old Dad, 5e, they can pull up, they can burst down, and they could pop a pop.
30 seconds is all it is, and then that charge is going to be right back up. It is going to be like clockwork. 42-year-old Dad, of course, going for that lethality build just as well. And right now we are at a feat of peace. We are waiting on the last feat. The neutral camp takes. uOttawa are currently up to 3 out of Drexel's 1 in 3, as they only have 1 dragon. I am keeping track of that just because I think it's fun. I think it's very important that we do keep track of that, because the teams may or may not also have that in the back of their minds, as we see the rotations come down for what looks to be a potential Herald on the board.
And that will decide who gets the pizza spot, right? Because first Rick went the way of uOttawa, and then kills went the way of Drexel. Sarnical now still actually doing fine in the 1v1, but it's not going to be 1v1 for much longer. 5e, I don't know if they have enough damage actually between the two.
I wonder if they were trying to pull a ult out of Sarnical just to be an annoyance up there, but for right now it is just trying to get extra damage on the tower, maybe break the tower down in time to allow ET to kind of roam out from there.
And with the mana that Sarnical has, ET, if he can hold him in lane, can just kind of ignore the Malphite and go just straight for the turret as well. Do a lot of work on that, potentially take it down. Charge is back up. I think the thing that's actually slowing things down for uOttawa is that mid lane outer turret going down. Because of that, they don't have the easy dive on Gravity, and they've got to track where Salt is, because you could definitely dive Blueby if he's on his own, but with the Maokai, it gets quite a bit trickier. Can it be done? Yes, but if you mess up, you might feed that donkey over.
And I mean, Caustic is also kind of thinking something along those lines. Saw 3 rotating in, and okay, said, yeah, I can't really deal with that right now. But it is going to be 2 feats headed over to uOttawa's way. In exchange, Drexel saying we at least want to get the dragons under our control. However, they're going to contest with some artillery over the wall here, as they're actually not allowed to even go for the dragon. There it is, collected and put up. uOttawa Gray saying thank you very much for the free Herald.
Yeah, they don't actually have a good dragon taking team. Normally the Kog'Maw you do, but because this is AP Kog'Maw, the poke is really good, the trading is really good, but taking the dragon, the shred, is not so good. And Gravity, unfortunately, can't actually win off the hill. He's 2 levels down on this Ari right now.
And you can feel the weight of those 2 levels, I would
Gonna
just like to
dive in.
point out. Like, that was painful to say the least. Gravity, I mean, is being picked on relentlessly here. Like clockwork, maybe not even with a charge, but just with the damage. And yet again, Lithuania is caught in the crossfire. Even trying to flash over, dodges the charm, but you get hit by the Chain of Corruption and you have no Crescent Guard. So it's Caustic to pick up their 4th as well, getting 6 charges on their Dark Seal.
Yeah, the turret's still standing, by the way. Outer turret. It's going to get taken down by minions. Blueby has to keep running any CC lands, and he's in trouble. 5e, though. 5e,
all right, so we're seeing why 5e is dying so often. Dying for the vibes, I guess. I don't know. Like, that was actively... no one else was following, by the way.
I was actually waiting for you to tell me why. I was like, I'm not seeing it here.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Either way, the fact that uOttawa were allowed to even chase into the jungle feels criminal in itself.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you're ahead. And keep in mind, that particular play, by the way, didn't have ET. We've highlighted ET so much as one of the strongest points of the map for uOttawa Gray. He was one enabling the early dives. Well, they don't even need him anymore for some of these dives. Gravity is just so far behind. He's equal level to Blueby, and he's barely ahead of Lithuania. Drexel Dragons as a whole is starting to fall behind in terms of pacing. And if y'all can't survive dives, Sarnical can't move to help you. We talked about, hey, if your Malphite falls behind, it's hard for you to engage. It's the opposite situation now, where Sarnical is the only one who's kind of doing decent in his lane. Everybody else is so squishy, everybody else is so diveable. And as the top laner, if Sarnical goes to help you, he's going to fall behind. And then at that point, you don't even have a way to get back into the game.
You're just kind of stuck there. Sat waiting as SMB 5e once again to kind of get caught out here, but that's the call. Once again, the charge with 3 Chain of Corruption lands directly onto Blueby. Blueby is dropped and popped, and Lithuania is the next to fall. 2 wrapped up as neat as can be.
Hi, that had to be the last pixel of the Chain of Corruption that touched Blueby. I didn't think it had that range on it. Yeah, it lollipopped, it nailed him, and we talked about the fact that, hey, Blueby's got to be the carry for this team. Because Gravity's so far behind. Yeah, that didn't happen. By the way, Gravity didn't go full lethality. You rushed a shoulder. That's fine for trading in lane. Not so great for the team fight. For Drexel right now, I am very concerned. It feels like we've gone back to game 1, right? Where they're just behind, they can't team fight, and the game's just going to snowball from here. You can't even stop the team fight from happening. uOttawa Gray, with this plan, gets to decide when the fights want to happen. They don't care if it's a turret. They'll dive in.
And the best part, it's not so cut and dry, I want to say. I mean, yes, the Kled charge is very obvious. It's like, hey, Kled charge means a team fight's coming in. But you have other reactions into it. We talked about game 1 and how those team fights occurred. Well, it was either a Rel crashdown or we were looking at, what was it, a Skarner charge in. Those are your 2 engaged tools, and those are your big kind of like hallmark chase-ins. Instead, now we're watching this kind of silliness occur that you can do whatever you want. Now, granted, ET might be in a spot of trouble. You don't have flash, you get ulted, you get rocked, you're off Skarl. This might be his 1 death, and it's very, very much due, considering how much BM you try to get away with.
I was actually wondering for a second if he was going to get out using the Herald in the charge back out. That would have been hilarious. And unfortunately, for the side of uOttawa, his death is going to be completely in vain. There was... Actually, no, I forgot about Asakan. It just spawned Orbital, and they took it on spawn. Oh. Never mind. There was actually a point to that. That was a tactical int. Solid.
Yes, we totally saw that going down, by the way. We totally saw that going down. Now, keep in mind, this is not the extra life Otacon. So walk us through, because I don't think we see this very often, unless it's in... I don't want to say unless it's in collegiate, but we don't see it in pro play that much.
True, yeah. I think they broke a record on how many kills they could get in a best of 3 in the LTA North this last weekend, and they still couldn't spawn a Ruinous. Now we get to see a Ruinous. What it kind of gives you is you get more experience, so it speeds up that team, as well as gives more flowers, which is more of a snowball mechanic. So it's kind of scary actually for Drexel that this is the Otacon that spawned, because now uOttawa is going to snowball. They already had an experienced lead, but they will continue to be able to snowball that if they can get kills. And that if is the big question right now, because Drexel has managed to slow down the pace of the game. Drexel managed to get the pick onto Kled. And if you're slowing down the pace of the game, it does benefit Drexel a little bit more. They can still look to fight. They just have to make sure that they don't get picked off or that they win Zip fights.
And the fact that KC was almost willing to dive right on in, just trying to clear out some of that vision right now for an upcoming chase up bot and mid, I like it. I like that uOttawa are also saying, yeah, we slowed down a little bit too long. We're starting to see ET, they're starting to send, 2 or 3 members towards the top side, so we need to see that mix up. And ET is actually going to keep chasing. Remember, 3 items deep right now with the Eclipse built up, and now you're going to chase out. Lithuania now on a hard chase, missed on that W, and unfortunately, you might get chased even further, so ET is going to be hanging on and only for a little bit longer. So a great kill coming down once again, but let's look at the bot side as now we get another chase in, and that's the route that you want. 1 kill versus 1 in a tower. I'll take that any day of the week for uOttawa Gray.
Yeah, and because Sarnico already used his ultimate, because Lithuania is not there as well, there wasn't really a tank. Salty is not that tanky right now, so the dive on the bot side becomes a very real possibility. Even with Sarnico kind of walking up aggressively here, I actually don't believe that Drexel Dragons have any real threat because the ult is down. There is no easy engage, and Sarnico, okay, he's got the Frozen Heart at least, and he's got the Thorn Note, so he's really armor tanky right now, but Kaztech could do a lot of hurt to him, and there's nothing Sarnico can really do about that.
I mean, I was wondering if we were going to see that straight up Rabadons out of the back pocket, but Kaztech I don't think was able to pick it up. Instead, you want to get back out on the map for this dragon. It's an ocean dragon to play with, by the way, which is great for a skirmish heavy comp like this. You dip in, you dip out, you get back to healthy, and that would actually, I think, push ET a little bit higher up in these 1v2s just as well. Now, granted, there's no burn yet, but, we wait and see. I mean, the grievous wounds are there, but that's going to be the chain of corruption. Plus the pop, and you are just gone. Talking about that unstoppable force, you can't use it if you're dead.
True. 40 seconds. That's a longer timer than the out timer. It actually just came off cooldown as well. Casey going to be able to take this dragon out for free, and Kaztech has absolutely no mercy.
I love the fact that Kaztech was like, yo, you eat this because you had the cleanse, so I can dive right back in. Another charm underneath the tower as gravity is like, no, get away from me. But a great 2-piece combination that we mentioned. This Ari and the Varus can do so much work together.
To be honest, it feels like any combination of 2 champions from uOttawa can do that work to any squishy member of Drexel. And because Sarnico was down, it was on Lithuania, who unfortunately wasn't in the area. And because of that, they're paying the price. It's not just Dragon that went down, Orbital. They're going to lose potentially all 3 inhibitors.
I think it is, and they're not going to lose a single member either for it, as Sarnico is trying to chase in, and maybe it's 5e that's going to be set up as that's going to be the chase in. Knockup actually landed on Casey at the very end, but they're still running around, so I love this. There go all the inhibitors, and now you got to bring out the fight as that's the chase in the back line. Another chain of corruption lands, and that's the poke that you want. Chase right back out to annihilate 2 more. It's a double kill for Kaztech, and now Casey dives right back on in. Piercing arrow lands on the rock, but a shutdown going to Lithuania. Now Blueby trying to pump out damage here, but again, the auto attacks do nothing. It's really that living artillery that you're trying to land.
And he did do quite a bit of damage, managed to cut through. Lithuania looking to go in, but has to be careful. Kaztech.
Fancy feet, dodging 3, dodging another, as they had a charge up. The fight's gone on so long, and they're gonna kill another. Dash right back out. You are safe. ET comes in for the save. The rush went on too long. Lithuania will survive. No, 42-year-old dad said, get over here, flash arrow.
No mercy whatsoever. The flash in to secure it onto Lithuania. The entire time, minions pushing into the base as well. We're seeing a teleport come through from Kaztech.
No way. 42-year-old dad hasn't spent, what, the 2K that they picked up? They're looking for the end here, as that's tower number 1. Next is tower number 2. Yes, they respawn, but in 5 minutes, and you're not going to live that long. Drexel Dragon slaying yet again in what is a decisive game 2. uOttawa Gray will win the opening series of the NECC.
Drexel might have won the placement match, but uOttawa Gray wins the league match, the one that matters more, and they win it 2-0 Orbital. Great, amazing play from them. And again, this is a team that promoted from Division 3, last split, to Division 2. They were top 4 in their division. They thought they were at least top 2, but they faced the unfortunate bracket in the semifinals, and now they're in Division 2. They promoted. They're here to make a mark. Great showing for them. Drexel, on the other hand, you got to feel bad, right? Tonight, they're running 2 substitutes. This was not the starters they meant to start with. This is not the full strength for them. A rough loss for the Drexel Dragons, but I do like the changes and adaptations they made in-game to a much more competitive game. And Blueby, especially on that Kog'Maw, did a ton of work game 2.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how short notice you stepped in, but you tried your best, and honestly, it always feels bad whenever we see that. And granted, there's plenty more season to play out. We can go ahead and see maybe Blueby in the future stepping in, maybe taking extra lessons, maybe prepping with Salty, as we mentioned. Salty stepping in here as a relatively new addition into the team. Maybe needs a little bit more time to gel, even with that sub-roster in there. Either way, though, Drexel Dragons will unfortunately start their season off with an 0-2 on their record. So, uOttawa Gray, great revenge from the placement matches. RMC, though, every single member of uOttawa Gray showing up here today, and I find it very difficult to say there has to be one in the spotlight, but if you had to choose one, who would it be?
Man, to be 42 years old and go back to school, pick up League of Legends, learn to win a game, I think that would be amazing overall, but he's not 42 years old, so no, he's not getting the MVP.
Oh.
It's hard to call, honestly. To be fair, I think everybody on that team did a fantastic job. I think my gut reaction right now is to give it to ET in the top lane. His Kled play was immaculate. He got a massive lead with the Gnar as well. But Casey and Kaztek, I think, get huge shout-outs from me as well. I think Casey continued to have a lot of impact on the map. Same thing in game 2 with the J4. He's very active. And Kaztek on the Ahri, on the Victor. Man, it feels like when he showed up to a fight, that fight was going to be won every time he showed up. So I'll give it to ET, but I think the entire top side of uOttawa did, or the entire team as a whole, did fantastically well.
All right, well, unfortunately, Midlife Crisis will not earn you MVP, but it'll get pretty dang close. So, very well done to the entirety of uOttawa Gray. We hope to see even more of them in the future because, gosh dang, do they look good. They're looking on a warpath to maybe even reach into Div 1 action. But at the current moment, that is it for the evening as our series has concluded here for the NECC opening week of games. Now, of course, we're here on Tuesday. There's more games Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesday will be Rainbow Six Siege. That'll be starting at 8 p.m. ET. Rocket League will be on Thursday and Overwatch 2 on Friday. Every single match will start at hopefully the same time, the regular time of 8 p.m. ET. So make sure to tune your clocks and stay tuned. With that, we're going to be done here. I want to give a big shout out to our production side. We had Rare Adam on the producer side, and then Chippy, of course, on the observation. Missing first bloods here and there, but getting the rest of the action crystal clear. Right now, we thank everyone for tuning in. My name is uOttawa. With me has been RMC. I got to send him back to the rich. We'll see you all tomorrow.